Teachers, do you ever think about your thinking? Like, I find myself doing that all the time. And it's really cool, especially when you're reading. Like, you actually are listening to yourself read and listening to yourself think. That's actually called metacognition, and it is a strategy that all readers need to know and understand. So today we're going to dive deep into what is metacognition, and I'm going to give you some amazing tips that you can use right away in your classroom to help you teach metacognition to your students. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Sierra Harris Teaching Channel. I'm so glad you're here today. Before we dive into metacognition, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos from the Sierra Harris Teaching Channel. We've got some great ones coming out and you're not going to want to miss them. So thank you so much for subscribing. As you listen, feel free to comment below, like the video. It really does help, and I appreciate all of you so much. Thank you. All right, so metacognition. The definition of metacognition is actually thinking about your thinking. And it's a really obscure concept, like if you really stop and think about it. And teaching kids how to think and how to think about their thinking, that's like twofold, right? We're doing like two things at once. It's a really powerful strategy when students understand it and they can use it. Think about the times when you're like, why are they just not figuring out that they don't understand? Why are they not catching on that they don't understand what they're reading? Like, why? We have those questions all the time for a lot of different students. Metacognition is almost always the key. Are you actually teaching them? And of course, are they using metacognition, thinking about what they're reading, thinking about their thoughts, and catching themselves that they are either distracted, catching themselves that they are interacting with the text and they're understanding it, or catching themselves to say, I don't even understand a word I just read. And then they have strategies in their toolbox that they can use to go back and fix that. So metacognition is one of those foundational strategies that needs to be taught every year for every grade level to make sure your students truly understand this really powerful strategy. All right, so we know what metacognition is. It's thinking about your thinking. We know why it is so important. So let's dive into some tips, and I'm going to give you some really actionable lessons or activities too that you can try with any text in any grade level that are really going to make metacognition fun and engaging to teach. So the first thing I want to talk about is to make sure that you are teaching the different types of thinking. So there are three types of thinking that you want to make sure you are exposing your students to and teaching them how to observe them and witness and recognize that this type of thinking is happening. The first one is called distracting thinking. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? But it's when the reader is thinking about something else that's unrelated to the text that they are clearly reading. Again, self-explanatory. The next one is interacting thoughts. So these are thoughts that take place while you read and that are about the text. Now, they can be times when you're accessing your schema. They could be times when you're making connections. They could be moments when you stop and think to clarify information. There's a lot of different types of interacting thoughts that you can have with the text. And then the final type of thinking I always teach is reacting. So this happens when students are having to do a behavior because of the text. So they don't understand, so they're reacting by asking a question. They don't understand, so they're reacting by rereading. Or these also could be thoughts that happen after the fact. So they are done reading and now I'm thinking about what I just read and reacting to it. You know, I'm really surprised that the character did this, or I'm not sure why this happened. So there can be a lot of different ways that students can react towards a text or with a text as well. So distracting thoughts, interacting thoughts, and reacting thoughts are three different types of thinking that you want to make sure that you are teaching your students. So when you introduce metacognition and you tell them, yes, it's thinking about thinking, this kind of makes it a little bit more clear. So they can actually hear themselves in their heads and they can think, am I being distracted right now? Or am I interacting with the text? Or am I reacting with the text? And sometimes it's even cool to give them like little motions just like I did, right? So I forget what I always use for distracting, but I know interacting, we did something like this, and then reacting, we did this, like you're reacting to something. I'm sure you can come up with something really cute for distracting as well, but it's really cute to have some of those more tactical hand movements and stuff when you're teaching these. So that would be my absolute first thing. When you're introducing metacognition, make sure your students understand that there are different types of thinking that I can or that could be taking place in my mind, and I need to be aware of what those are. So, a great activity that you could do with this is by modeling having certain thoughts written out on like sentence strips or note cards, and then you have them kind of in your lap ready to go. And then as you read the text out loud, this could be a single page text, it could be a picture book, does not matter. You are putting up on the front board or on anchor chart paper the different thoughts that you had, okay? And you just put them up in the order that you are using them and reading them. Doesn't matter. They just need to be in sequential order. When you are done, have the students help you sort the different types of thinking that you had while you read. If you don't want to do this ahead of time and you want to make it a lot more authentic, then you can write out your thoughts literally as they are happening. So that makes it a little bit longer. So if you want to save some time, if you're, constrained with time, then you want to pre-write out your thoughts and let them know, yes, I did pre-think these, but in reality, I would be doing them in the moment. They understand, they get it. So you can do one or the other. But the whole point of this activity is that they are becoming aware of the different thoughts that they are having as they read. And they get really into it because they love identifying the distracting thoughts. They think those are so cool. But think of how powerful it is when your students are able to identify distracting thoughts that are keeping them from reading and understanding the text. Such a powerful tool. And this is a very easy, very concrete way to make sure that your students are doing that. So again, having them sort out the thoughts, and then you can even have them do it with their own. Have them sort out their own thoughts as they practice. They can record, they can sort, they can highlight, color code, anything you want, really. But making sure that they understand those three different types of thoughts. Again, distracting, interacting, and reacting is a great way to really introduce and focus on and teach metacognition. So another amazing tip that you can use to help teach metacognition is to really focus on the connection between the text and the thoughts. This is another really powerful strategy that is connected to metacognition, of course, because you're thinking about the thoughts you have, but it really brings it back hardcore to the text. And so this helps students in multiple ways. One, they're using metacognitive strategies, right? They're thinking about their thinking. But then the second and really powerful part of this is you're helping them connect to the text, which is going to help them make it more concrete and help them identify and use text evidence. How many of you, right? Raise your hand. How many of you just struggle every year with getting your students to use text evidence? Well, this right here could be a solution. By having your students create the correlation between their thoughts and where they occur in the text can help them then later when they're answering questions and they're having to provide text evidence. They will have those actual, like I kind of explain it like you're creating or connecting a string from your brain to that specific point in the text. You're making that visual connection from your thought to right there. And so then later on, when they are having to answer comprehension questions, that connection or that string is already there. So they're going to be able to go back and find where in the text they need to use that evidence much quicker and much easier than they were if they never made the connection between that. So something you can easily do with an activity to make this more concrete and hands-on is to provide them with a text. Again, it could be a picture book, it could be, a one-page text, but then you are also providing them note cards which have thoughts on them. These are going to either be interacting or reacting thoughts. You are not going to provide them with distracting thoughts for this. Basically, the whole concept of this activity would be to have them match where this thought goes in the text. So if I were to have thought this as I was reading, where in the text would I have thought it? So it really helps make it concrete that this thought should happen here. And then you can even go into more detail or have the students talk amongst each other when doing the activity. Why is this thought even important? Is this an interacting thought? Is it a reacting thought? And why should I, as the reader, should have had this thought as I read? And so really powerful conversations can come from an activity like this. And then as much or more frequently as you do an activity like this, you're making that a habit where the students are having thoughts, connecting it directly to a specific spot in a text, and then hopefully then being able to use that later as text evidence when they're answering questions. So another really powerful strategy. I just love this one. Students really get into it. You could even bring out the string if you wanted to. Like see if you can blow up a paragraph and see if you can have them actually pull out the string and connect it to different words or phrases or sentences. There's a lot of unique and fun ways you can make this really hands-on and engaging. But just overall, it's a really powerful strategy. So another great tip for metacognition is to make sure you are modeling thinking out loud. Research shows that with any of the actual strategies that we teach our students, such as visualization, making connections, asking questions, metacognition, that it is proven that the best way to teach these is by modeling. So we need to make sure that we are modeling consistently our thinking out loud for our students. So this can become tricky, especially at the beginning of the year, because your students are going to want to respond to everything that you say. But you need to make sure that you let them know, I'm going to read and model my thinking out loud. There is nothing that you need to do other than listen. And it's going to take some habit to form, but they're going to get used to what a model looks like for you. And then you are able to completely expose what happens inside your brain to your students. And therefore they learn from that this is what a reader's brain sounds like. And the really cool thing about this is once they get used to this, you can actually pull students up and model the thinking for the class. And then you're having them actually practice. So as you read out loud, they can simply just do like a silent signal. And that would just tell you I'm just going to stop, and they're going to express a thought. It could be a question. It could be, an interacting thought. It could be a distracting thought, which, hopefully doesn't happen, but sometimes it does. But have them practice modeling the thinking out loud. And a really cool activity you can do with this as well is to have your students create a mind map. These are so much fun, and they can become a really cool project even, depending on how far you want to take it. But basically, a mind map is a game board, or you could use a grid of boxes, either one. I typically like to use like one of those swivel S-shaped game boards, and then it's divided into different sections. So maybe 10 different sections on the entire board itself. And then I have different color coding off to the side of the different types of thinking that could be taking place. Now, you could do this one of two ways. You could do 3 different colors, one for distracting thoughts, interacting thoughts, and reacting thoughts. Or you could take it a step further, because you can actually teach then in the interacting thoughts and in the reacting thoughts what should be happening there. Well, all of the other strategies, asking questions, making connections, synthesizing, making predictions, making inferences, like all of those are types of thinking as well. So you could make a color coding key for those, and then they color in the different pieces on their game board as they do those types of thinking. So then it's really cool to compare your mind map to my mind map. You did much more making inferences than I did. I wonder what inferences that I missed. Or I made a lot more connections than you did. Do you not have schema to really understand this text? And I do, so I was able to make more connections to it. There's a lot of really powerful, complex thinking that can come from creating a mind map. So by doing this, again, you're making students aware of their thinking, going back to the definition, thinking about thinking, and then they are recording the types of thinking and having really great conversations about the thinking that took place. Can you see how cool that would be? And they're really fun to display too, because they're really colorful and they look really neat, and they make great talking points too. So overall, you can tell here metacognition is extremely important to teach. It's one of the first things I teach every single year, and is one of those foundational skills that I always go back to. If I find students are struggling, one of the first things I go to is metacognition. The other thing is schema. Those two almost always are going to be pieces that your students are missing when it comes to them being able to truly comprehend a text. So if you walk away with anything today, know one, metacognition is really important. Two, understand that metacognition is thinking about your thinking. And then three, you've got some great tips and activities that you can try in your classroom that you could use right away to help make sure your students understand metacognition as well. So thank you so much for tuning. I really hope you got some great ideas and to take away and use in your classroom. Before you go, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the future videos from the Sierra's Teaching Channel. We've got some amazing things coming up and you are not going to want to miss them. So thank you so much for tuning in, friends, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. We'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.